I know. I've mentioned before I'm all but done making homemade black powder because I've got what I want, you know, information-wise. But this particular batch of gunpowder is my wife's fault. Let me explain. So if you live in the Southwest, at least where I live, you'll eventually get familiar with what we call the yucca plant. It is kind of a grassy plant, if you want to call it that. But the interesting thing is as you can see, they grow a stalk. And these yucca plants can also be very invasive. But on these stems, and I'll show one here in a little bit, they put off a seed pod. And I've shown on this channel, even in my backyard, that the deer like eating the seed pods, and so do the elk. But you can see how invasive these yucca plants can actually be. Now there's another one right here. It's got quite a bit of stems that would hold these seed pods. Now here's a yucca plant that I found, and you can see there's new stem growth right there. As this grows, this will have quite a few seed pods on it. And you can see from right here, they'll grow in and amongst anything. Here's a juniper tree, and right at its base is a yucca plant. So what I'm about to show here is the difference between last year's stem growth and previous years. And I don't know how well the camera can pick it up right now, but you can see that there is a difference in color. This stem right here is a lot more lighter in color, and as you can see, it becomes like a twig, like a branch. This is old growth, and you can see, I hope, that it broke much easier. So the point that I'm getting at is last year's stem growth is what I'm looking for, and you can determine that just by the colors of the stems. Again, the color, and you can see they're pretty strong. They are dried out, but I'll show you what I have already gathered and what the inside of them really looks like. How exciting! Do you guys know what that is? Let me clean it up and see if you can identify what it is once I clean it up. Well, did you guys guess what it was? If you'd have guessed a piece of petrified wood, you'd have been spot on. I just washed all the mud off it. That's what it looks like in whole. But look at the top of it. If you look real close, and hopefully the sun can reflect well enough, you can actually see the growth rings. The growth rings are still present. Interesting. But before anybody asks, no, I'm not going to char this up and make gunpowder out of it. That's just beyond reason. But yeah, to find a chunk of petrified wood this big, for me, is pretty amazing. Alright, let me show you some more of the yucca stems. So first things first, here's the stem that I harvested with all the opened seed pods. And you can see that these stems in themselves will contain quite a few seed pods. And like I mentioned earlier, the deer eat these, so do the elk. Alright, so let me get one of the bigger pieces, cut it open so you can see what the inside of the stem looks like. So I've worked on this piece for just a little bit, and all I did was just scrape it down, cut off most of the nodules. I'll probably sand the rest of this stuff, but if you look at the inside of it, it pretty much appears to have a grain structure like wood does. You know, unlike the mullein stem, which had a pithy core, once it dries out it becomes hard. And again, this is very, very hard. I can't even begin to dent it. But I'm going to try making some gunpowder out of it, and it's all my wife's fault. And you might want to stay tuned to the channel, because my friend Broken Feather, William, is sending me a box of Siberian elm. Now, he's already made some gunpowder out of that, but I have not heard yet what his results are. And he was wanting me to make some gunpowder with my method and just kind of compare end results. Because he and I have had discussions before regarding juniper. My juniper burns pretty clean. He is saying that his juniper burns a little on the dirty side, and we're wondering if it's the groundwater. Where we live here in New Mexico, because of the nuclear testing they did back in the 40s, in the 50s, we're looking at how much the groundwater has changed, perhaps. But I do know that depending on where you live in New Mexico, a lot of people have to bring in their water, just simply because there's spots in the state where the arsenic content is very, very, very high. So that could be, part of the reasons why I get a cleaner burning juniper gunpowder than what, Broken Feather does. So I'm anxious to try that Siberian elm. So I'm going to go ahead and continue processing, cut this up, put it in a char can, and just follow my normal steps making gunpowder. Stay tuned. So as I'm cleaning this up, I just wanted to show you real quick what the root ball looks like. Okay. And that's what the root ball looks like this way. I've already split it. You open it up, and it's real fibrous inside. It's got a real fibrous structure. I'm not going to be using any of that, obviously, for making the gunpowder, but if somebody wanted to give it a whirl, do it, because I'm not. But it is very, very fibrous. And you could probably go online also and type in practical uses for the yucca plant, because I do know that historically the Native American Indians, and I've actually seen a pair that a friend of mine had discovered in the back end of a cave somewhere here in New Mexico, a pair of shoes that were woven with the the yucca, not the plant stem itself like what I'm using for the gunpowder, but all those leafy looking parts of the yucca, which they are sharp, and if you're not careful with it and you go to grab it and run your hand through it, you will get cut. They are sharp enough to cut human flesh, but when you process the fiber down, much like you would like with a Panama straw hat, I've seen personally shoes that were woven from this plant stuff. Just a side note. So I don't know if any of you do this, but this is just a common practice of mine. What I do is I take my little hand torch and I burn out all remaining creosote from the previous charring session, just so that I could avoid any type of cross contamination. Whether this is really beneficial in making gunpowder, I don't know, but this is just something that I do as a precautionary, just in case type thing. And you'd be surprised how much of that creosote is really left behind, and how much it does, and how much of it will burn off with a torch. See how much of that creosote's burning off? This is why I do this. See, I'm wondering, in making gunpowder, how much of that would cross-contaminate. So just a interesting side note, something that's observable. I've got all what I would call the outer bark. It's not really a bark. It's just sort of like a protective coating, I guess. But having chopped some of it up, I don't know if the camera can pick it up all that well, but it's very porous, which, you know, in the context, it's very light, but once you char this down and break it up, and you get rid of the pores and gets down to, you know, the actual cell structure as it's broken down and charred up, this might end up surprising even myself for what the specific gravity just might be. But we'll get to that point in just a moment. So not wanting to over char this, we can see that some of it is nice light brown. Some of it might be a little black. And in fact, some of it's still cooling a little bit, because if you listen, you can hear it still crackling. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in my container and start breaking up and see what we can get. Okay, I'm going to make a guess here, just simply because I can do that. My can was almost half full, and you can see the size pieces that I started out with. They were pretty, you know, pretty decent in length. None of it was split up. It just, I charred it that way. I know the camera's probably not going to pick it up too well, the sun, but I've got, I yielded the lines about right here. So I got quite a bit out of that. Based on past experience, I'm going to guess that this is going to be pretty light. I would say comparable to willow, if not even lighter. And if that's the case, then I will tell you how I'm going to approach this. So I'm going to go ahead and get the yucca filtered through that micro screen, get 15 grams weighed out, and take it from there. So we've come to the point to see how much 15 grams of yucca occupies volume-wise. Okay, so here's the yucca right here. It's quite a bit. But remember, this is a plant, it's not a wood. This is sycamore at 0.49. Here's the control. Willow, 0.39. And this is aspen at 0.45. So it looks to me like the yucca is pretty doggone close to the willow. Now we already know that 15 grams of potassium nitrate will burn the willow, but it does burn dirty. And we know that both the sycamore and the aspen burn clean with the 75 grams of potassium nitrate. So I'm going to have to try to decide what I really want to do here. If I want to lower the volume of the yucca and just increase the volume of the KNO3, say by maybe another 5 grams or so. Let me get repositioned and we'll look and see what these represent in the jars. So here's 80 grams potassium nitrate, here's 75. What to do? Well, let's just do this. Remove the willow and move these two into view. And you can see that extra 5 grams does occupy a little bit more. I know it's difficult to see because this potassium nitrate is very difficult to level in the jar. But based on the fact that 75 grams will consume the willow dirty, I'm assuming that this 75 grams will consume the yucca, but I don't know if it'll consume it cleanly or not. So I'm going to go ahead and go with the 75. I'll make it easy just to be consistent with everything. And just remember, the yucca is a plant, it's not a wood. So we'll just have to see how this experiment turns out. And at this point, I'll probably do the initial burn at 12 hours. And if at 12 hours the burn is not sufficient or dirty, then maybe I'll just add another 4 or 5 grams of potassium nitrate at that time. Because at least I can start with a little less, and I can always add a little bit more as I continue to mill. So you'll have to stay tuned, as this is nothing but a work in progress. So here's our 12-hour burn test. Burned like I would have expected it. Get you close up of the block. So there's the block. And I think you can guess what I'm going to say. It's dirty. Yeah, there's a lot of charcoal rubbing off of my finger, but it's, you know, it's pretty clean. I mean, it's pretty clean as far as that's concerned. I don't see any minute pieces of KNO3 left behind, but yeah, here we go with the wet test. Actually, it ain't all that bad. It's really not. Wondering if I should put a couple more grams of potassium nitrate in it. You know what? I'm going to do it because I can, and I really don't think it's going to hurt anything. See you at the 24-hour test burn. Changed my mind. I went 5 grams. Based on the volume of the yucca, I just decided to make it an even 5. Alright, I'm going to get this back to milling, and we'll check it again at the 24-hour mark. Okay, just got it out of the ball mill, worked it through the screen just by shaking it with the lead media in the screen itself, and you can see even at 24 hours this stuff is compacting really good. So I'm going to get 20 grains of this and we'll do a test burn and we'll see if adding that extra 5 grams of potassium nitrate made any difference. So just to reiterate, based on the volume in the glass jars, the volume was close to willow. The previous burn burnt a little slow, obviously, because it was 12 hours. But at that point, I determined to put another 5 grams of potassium nitrate. So let's see if this is going to improve, not so much how quickly it burns, but maybe helping and burning it perhaps a little cleaner. Well, that went up a whole lot quicker. Let me show you the block. I'd say that burned a whole lot cleaner. There's nothing in the way of little chunks of potassium nitrate. Dry finger rub. I'd say that's fairly clean, compared to some of the other ones I've done. I don't know if I can get much in the way of anything left over. That's pretty clean. Well, that's encouraging. My hypothesis turned out to be maybe correct. If you have this much charcoal and this much potassium nitrate, don't lower the charcoal and raise the potassium nitrate. Leave the charcoal where it was and just raise the potassium nitrate, which is what I did. So this formula is 80, 15, 11. And I decided to do that just based on the extra volume of the charcoal, of the yucca. Alrighty, I'm going to let this mill a little bit longer. Again, probably about 30 hours. Do the final test and then puck it and screen it and grade it and see how it burns then. Stay tuned. Oh, by the way, how'd you like the elk? So for the sake of consistency, this is 30 hours. I'm going to shut her down right here because just looking at this you can tell this is well compacted, well mixed. And with this particular test burn at 30 hours, I really don't look to see for that much of a difference between this burn and the burn at 24 hours. And then all I do is I just let, you can see the lead media on top. I don't push it through the screen, I just let the lead balls do the work for me. I know there's quite a bit of shadow. It's 6:30 in the morning right now. And you can see I just got done letting the round ball, the lead media, do its thing, and you can see how everything is still compacted. I can shake it around and you can see. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and go do the burn test. 20 grains. Went up pretty quick, didn't it? Let me get the close-up of the block and I'll tell you what I think about it. Now, there's a close-up of the block. This little speck right here is part of the match. That's pretty clean, guys. I'm going to just kind of rub it a little bit. There's the finger. So there's not much charcoal left behind. Okay, let me see if I can get a little bit with the whatever's left. Actually, it's not much left. It's pretty clean. Alright, I'm going to get her pucked up And graded. It's early yet. I gotta have some more coffee. Get it sized, and then we'll do a 30 grain burn, and I'm gonna do it on the opposite side of this block just so that we can, you know, kind of compare at that point. All right, I'll see you in just a little bit. Okay, 30 grains, pucked, dried, screened to my normal 2,3F with a little bit of 4F mixed in it. That went up pretty darn quick. Let me show you the block. Now just remember, as I show you the block, this is 80, 15, 11. There's the block. Judge for yourselves. I'm looking at that. That's pretty clean. A little darker, but then again, you would expect wet charcoal and dust like this to be a little darker. But looking beyond that, once it dries, I don't think it's going to be all that dirty. But the ultimate test will be in my muzzle loader. If it starts plugging up, or if I have any problems loading it after 5, 6, 7 shots. We'll find that out shortly. Alrighty, first things first. It's about 9:30 in the morning, about 64 degrees, a slight breeze. I'll try to cut out most of that in the editing process. And I will be using Yucca in the flash pan. And Yucca, 80 grains by weight, occupies, and I'll tell you what it is, 84 grains by volume, just simply because I measured what that difference was. So, without any further ado, let's see what kind of numbers that this can produce. And bear in mind, this formula is 80, 15, 11. And I will be re-editing my first video that I did with Yucca because it failed. And you'll see why. If you stick around in the next few days or so, you'll see that video also posted. Well, you guys see it like I do. 1839. That's pretty respectable. But remember, it's going down a clean barrel. I'm going to see if I can't find the patch, mark off the target. I know I hit the bullseye. So we'll just keep going and see what the spread's going to be at this point. Well, there's the patch. That's real clean. That's real clean. But there again, it's going down a clean barrel. So let's just observe what the rest of the patches are going to do. $17.89. $18.01. And I didn't find the second patch. Hopefully I can find this one. $17.96. Well, I did manage to find that patch because I kind of kept my eye looking out for it while trying to hold my rifle dead on the bullseye, but I shot a little high. I'll show you the target later. But there's the patch, and it's fairly clean, guys. It's, you know, it's no different than anything else that I've been producing other than what is obviously dirty gunpowder. All right, I'm going to get a few more shots just because I want to see, you know, as I shoot more, if it's going to be any more difficult in loading. And so far, I haven't had any difficulties whatsoever. Alrighty, I'm going to get reloaded and get you another number. So once again, I hope that got into the shot, close up of my lock. $17.89. I didn't locate that patch either. I kind of have a sneaky suspicion they're spinning upwards and landing on top of the roof over here. That's my excuse and I'm sticking to it. Well, obviously that's a junk shot because it's 1361. So obviously I'm going to retake that, see if I can find the patch and go mark off the target. Well, at this point, I think I'm gonna put the chronograph in the shade for a few minutes and let it cool down, because I just can't believe that I'm only getting numbers in the 1300s. All right, so let me get this accomplished, mark off the target, see if I can find the patch, and be right back at you. Well, there's that patch. It's no different than the previous patch. There's nothing building up on it. I mean, if I saw, you know, gunk building up on it, then I would say, yeah, that's pretty dirty. But at the same time, I'm not having any loading difficulties whatsoever. Based on the first few shots, minusing the last two shots at 1340 something, which I think is a glitch, it could prove to be a pretty viable, powerful black powder. Imagine what this would do at 90 grains volume. It would be pretty respectable. All right, I'm going to get reloaded, see if I can't get a couple more numbers for you, just to round all this out. While I wait for this to cool down for a few more minutes, I have a thought. I saw a video some time back regarding chronographs, and the fellow that did the video said that if your chronograph is tilted, you're going to get different readings. The best option that you would have in getting consistent numbers is leaving your chronograph flat. Well, I can't do that right now because the angle of the sun is changing and I'm having to, you know, canter my chronograph, and I'm just kind of wondering if those last two shots at 1300 is because I just had to do that prior to those two shots. I don't know if there's any truth to that statement or not, but this is just what somebody recorded and put up on the internet that I just happened to run across. Take it for what it's worth, guys. I don't know what's going on. Now it's 1301. Maybe I'll swap out batteries. There's nothing indicating it's a low battery, but I just can't, comprehend that it went from 1800, 1700 down to 1300 at this point. But I'll mark off the calendar, right? the target, and see if I can find the patch and assess what's going on here. Stay tuned. Alrighty, I just changed strings, so let's see if I can get a good number this time. I don't know what's going on. 1349. That's interesting. That really is. I guess I'm gonna shut her down for now and clean the gun and maybe come out another day and shoot the rest of this yucca just to kind of see, if I can get this back up into the upper 1700s. Because like I said, I just can't imagine that being 1340 something feet per second at this point. But I do have, I got 5 good numbers. I got 5. I got 5 good numbers, so I can get an average off of the first 5 shots. Alrighty, I'll see you in the shop. So here's a close-up of the lock, just in case anybody's curious. Didn't have to wipe it down. Didn't have any ignition issues with it. I did find the last 3 patches, and believe it or not, these were 3/4 of the way to the target, and I don't think to look for the patches that far down the shooting lane, just simply because they don't typically make it that far. But these last 3 did. They're fairly clean. I got to admit, these have dried off since I was packing everything up and I found them. But once they're dried off, they're not really all that dirty. Alright, I'll show you the target in the shop. Okay, it took 1 hour and it's now 75 degrees. So within that hour, the temperature raised, what was it, 14 degrees? I don't know, but my chronograph was doing some very funky things with the last 4 shots. And just in case anybody's curious, my powder measure didn't move at all, so I was still shooting 80 grains by weight. So, at least I got you good 5 numbers. 5-shot average, 1802.8 with a spread of 50. It's not half bad. Now the target. Remember I said a couple of times I was shooting, I was looking ahead, and I can tell you that those 2 shots, one went here and the other one went down here. Shot number 2, let's see here, shot number 2 is this shot right here. But as you can see, it's not really throwing the round ball all over the place. Everything is just in a straight line. And like I said, those 2 shots, I was looking ahead to see if I can find out where those patches land. And I really didn't look far enough ahead because I was, looking to where the patches normally land, and it's just usually, 10 yards beyond the chronograph, if not up on the roof. But I've got some good shots grouped right here, and I got a double down here. And really, other than those 3 shots, everything hit the bullseye. So I would say Yucca would be a good viable source for gunpowder. It burnt clean. I didn't have any problems loading through all 9 shots, I should say, because I took a total of 9 shots and had no loading issues with it whatsoever. So anyhow, I want to thank everybody for watching, and stay tuned for my first attempt at making gunpowder, black powder with Yucca, because it failed and I had to go in a different direction, and you'll see that in the next video. So thanks for watching. I hope you give it a thumbs up and share it with your bestest of buds. Bye.